Charlie. They say that you're not supposed to read off the slides, and this is why, right? Because it's not going to be doing much reading this way. But I only have 10 minutes, and I have a few things going against me. I'm Italian, I'm a New Yorker, I'm a startup founder, and I have ADHD, so I think that last piece works a little bit in my favor. Today, first off, we're going to present a lot of data here. There's only so much data that you can squeeze into a 10-minute window, right? So I encourage everybody to go in and download all these reports. The reports that I'm going to reference, they're totally free, and if you have any questions, we can give you all of those insights. But instead of just kind of reading off some of the research and things that we found out about this year's Super Bowl, I wanted to kind of illuminate a couple of the things that really stuck out to me when I thought about what happened at this year's Super Bowl and how it relates to some of the trends that are happening today in sport. So we'll cover some of that today. But just a quick intro, if you don't know, Conviva is a sponsor of the event. We love the folks at SportsPro. You probably have seen our logo around the stadium today, so thank you guys for that. And we work with some of the world's largest social and streaming providers across a number of sports brands, agencies, and enterprise media companies. Too many to name, and most of the people that are here in attendance in some way, shape, or form. We provide analytics across all of your streaming platforms, so every owned video, site, application, OTT, or web mobile. And then we also have social insights, right? So social insights provides all of your analytics for your posts, your videos, your stories across Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, Snapchat, TikTok, YouTube, Twitch. And that's actually how I got involved with Conviva. Back in 2014, I started a company called Del Mondo. We built the first analytics for Snapchat, and then quickly started to work cross-platform with social video, and we're one of the first to actually lean into social video before it became what it is today. So let's talk a little bit more about, that's my last pitch slide, I promise. So let's talk a little bit about the industry challenges, and usually I would read off some of these, but I'll just kind of go through them really quickly, and we're going to have kind of just some insights and highlights around each one of them. So I think this year's Super Bowl, first off, it was very unique, and if you guys have been following the news, you found that it was quite a busy week for both the NFL and NBC as they were getting ready. Not only did they have the Super Bowl, but they also had the Olympics that were going on, and they also have a brand new streaming platform in Peacock that has been able to basically building that up and acquiring and being the place where they can distribute a lot of these sports rights. And so I think it's really interesting that this year, NBC and iSpot and Conviva have worked together to provide more robust and alternative measurement solutions, right? So I'm going to talk a little bit about that today, but also just some of the challenges that we have. So we did a report in the fall where we found that there is a serious problem with the streaming video consumer today, and that's choice, really, right? So there are thousands of streaming services. I mean, today we've really hit kind of that next stage of maturity as it comes to streaming video. So for the most part, most of the broadcasters have their own streaming service that's either in market or on its way. Pretty much everybody has a service that's out there. Here in the sports world, some of the rights holders, the leagues themselves, it's definitely more of a mixed strategy, and I'm going to highlight that in a little bit. Obviously, as the rights holder, you have the option to build your own platform. You can license that. You can do all sorts of things with it, so it's really unique on that front. But the biggest thing around that is there is a content discovery challenge when it comes to finding streaming content. And when sports, and I think we'll talk about this with live sports, kind of having, and I think we talked about it in the last session, with kind of live sports having not as much value after the live event is over, there is really this unique opportunity today with the general availability and accessibility of sports on streaming services. So there's a lot of really unique things that we can take a look at when it comes to the content discovery part of that. We'll talk a little bit about while live still hits, VOD is kind of non-existent today, so there's lots of folks out there who will tell you that it's kind of a struggle to figure out what else am I doing with my content when it's not live, or when SportsCenter or any of the sports clip shows can't even compete because everybody's going to YouTube and watching the content there. So we'll talk a little bit about that. And then finally, all of this to kind of say we also found some really interesting research that shows that there's a huge synergy between social viewers and streaming viewers. I'm actually going to pull out some stats from the report that we did that have never been released that I wanted to pull together today that I thought were really interesting. So really quickly, if we look at, we partnered with Dynata, they're a research company, and basically looked at, streaming preferences and how viewers actually discover content. The big thing to take away here is that there's still a challenge, and the 3 to 4 main sources of content discovery are first serendipity, so people browsing through streaming services or having content recommended to them. The second is still advertising, and you'll see, obviously, with a lot of the sport viewership still happening with linear television, it's no surprise that people are getting exposed to ads for streaming services and then signing up and going and watching that content. And the third and fourth are interesting. Third, word of mouth, which I would say nobody here could disagree with the fact that people talk. Good content has legs, and it will travel, and you'll want to tell somebody. And I think sports even more, right? It's a communal kind of shared experience. And the last piece is social media, which we'll talk about more. The interesting thing about this is when we actually surveyed those consumers and asked them what were the genres that they watched at least once a week, the folks that were high streaming viewers reported sports as one of the lowest genres of content that they watch, which I think from the gut we kind of know that because live sports are kind of the reason that people would go in and maybe watch sports, and the whole expansion of VOD content I think has been kind of nascent, and we're really expanding on that model. But I think what's more interesting is that when I kind of ignore the ugly graphic here, but if you take a look at some of the different slices of that same study, you can see that for the general consumer, sports kind of falls in the middle, extremely heavy on the linear TV side, which once again, gut is telling us that that's going to make sense because people are still tuning in. But what's really interesting, and kind of as I flip through here, is the fact that if people aren't coming in and watching your live content, what are they watching? And so we're seeing all of these different services who are going and buying rights and using them as ways to acquire viewers on their services, but they need to figure out how to have more value and push that out. So once again, I'll share some more of this data and the research. Okay, so let me go into my thing. So let's talk a little bit more about some of the insights. So live sports, right? So if we look at that example and we see that sports are kind of lower on the totem pole in terms of what people are thinking about when they're going and discovering content, like how do you actually take advantage of that, whether you're a broadcaster or you're a rights holder, right? Live sports really are going to continue to stay constant, but we really need that to be a catalyst for diversified platforms. So this is really where you get into this unique model where you have folks like NBC that are licensing content from folks like WWE. They're taking the content like the Super Bowl and the Olympics and putting it on Peacock, and they're using that as a means to acquire new viewers. I know that we had the Paramount folks up here before. We love those folks and work closely with them. Showtime Sports, Showtime Boxing, and obviously what they've been able to do with Paramount Plus and CBS bringing NFL rights or soccer rights over to that platform is definitely very valuable. So live sports can be a driver for actually acquiring viewers if you're building a diverse platform, right? And I think that's the idea, is that if you are one of these top 10 global streaming platforms, you are going to probably find that you're going to have some general type of audience, and live sports are going to be the way to bring people back at those big moments throughout the year, right? To actually get those subscribers that you might not have gotten because you're releasing original content from your studio, right? I think of Disney is a great example with such a balanced portfolio of ESPN, of Hulu, being able to obviously go into full-length feature films and the library of Disney Plus content. So let's talk about the content itself. So taking the live game out of it, I think what's really important is the diversification of being able to tell stories in and around the game itself. So this is some data that Conviva pulled across multiple different streaming service providers that were airing the Super Bowl, and this kind of shows the second-by-second viewership throughout that game. And this is once again streaming only, so you're getting that second-by-second data. You'll see that the peak moments are the halftime show. Now, once again, that probably doesn't sound too crazy. I think a lot of people would say generally people would tune into the halftime show. I would say there's been some bad halftime shows in the past couple of years. So I would say that this year they actually, if you think about what they did with the halftime show, being able to have multiple artists from multiple generations that were collaboratively coordinated, something for everybody, white, black, red, green. It didn't really matter who you were. You really had all sorts of different artists that people would like to interact with. And you saw that represented not just in the spike in viewership, but then also as you went onto social media and you started to see the commentary that was happening around the actual halftime show itself. which I think was super interesting. And kind of below that, you can also see some of the big spikes where social data, where social engagements were happening throughout the game. And once again, it's no surprise when you get that first touchdown of the game, your halftime show, and then after everybody wins, those are going to probably be some of the biggest moments. But once again, the content itself, while people are watching the Super Bowl and they're super pumped about, seeing tweets about what the next play was, at the same time, they're probably going to engage more with the highlights of Dr. Dre performing with Snoop Dogg, or Eminem when he comes out, or 50 Cent when he's hanging upside down, as opposed to just sitting there when, and there's no offense to the teams or anything, but it's probably a little bit more exciting when you're saying, okay, Joe Burrow's just missed another pass, right? Like, and somebody makes a tweet about that or posts a graphic about that. Those are going to have such a short half-life in the grand scheme of things, very similar to the way that the half-life of a live sporting event is. And I think that is a good transition to my next point, because that's what we've really seen in terms of how people are actually monetizing and building content around that. So I'm going to skip to the next. So the value of sports-related VOD content really has to improve and expand to include more cultural-focused storytelling. And this is really the case in the whole streaming TV industry, but I think in sports in particular. As I talked about before, there's a couple of different ways that you can go about this. You can build it, you can license that out, or like the NFL, you kind of have a hybrid model where you're taking all of this content. I don't know how many folks have been paying attention, probably lots of you here, to the way that franchises, NFL teams, the actual content owners themselves have expanded as far as the content that they're putting out there. When we started Del Mondo, which Conviva acquired, but when we first started Del Mondo back in 2014, the type of conversations that I was having with our customers like the Miami Dolphins or WWE was drastically different than the types of conversations we have today, right? The Philadelphia Eagles, I put their site up there as a great example. They have a digital marketing team, but they have a whole entertainment division in the way that they look at it. They build series around their chef and the types of food that they're making. They're doing those things and being able to bring in other interesting insights from the lifestyle, the city, the community, and being able to tell those stories. And same thing, you can choose to own it or buy it. I know that there's been a lot of discussion around Formula One and NASCAR licensing shows and building kind of more higher premium programming, but there's no difference than running that on your YouTube channel or selling it to Netflix, because as the IP owner, you're going to monetize it in one way or the other. So I think that's what's really important when you think about the value of a live game. Well, the value of the live game is only really when it's live, and then what can you do with those rights, or as the owner of the content itself, what can you do to tell a story that people want to come back and watch off the field? So once again, how do you get yourself into one of those genres that people are going to want to tune into every week? Okay, sports fans on social media, sports fans on social media build engaged sports fans on streaming platforms. I wrote that line this morning, so it's a little bit of a tongue twister. But this is some of the data, as I said, that we pulled out. So today, what we found is with that consumer study that we did, there's a direct correlation between high social media usage and high streaming video consumption. So these are folks that are on 5 or 6 social media platforms every single week, and they're creating and engaging content, and it's directly related to the amount of streaming content that they're watching. Now, this is the general audience. We didn't really split it up by genre, but I pulled some of the data from the raw survey files that we did, just to kind of gut check. And what I thought was really interesting is when we had asked folks, how often do you watch sports in a typical week? And on average, you can see never was the #1 response, which is okay. Lots of people that are watching streaming video may not think about watching sports there. Obviously, several times per week, that's looking a little bit better. But look at the difference between the responses from people who consider themselves heavy users of social media, right? The #1 response for sports was several times per week, right? 27, almost the closest next response is most days. So now we go from kind of the nevers or the casual to actually people who are pretty rampant in terms of watching sports content online. So that really gives a huge opportunity to go into my last point, which is when we look at the types of activities that people do, and we obviously have social data that can back this up as well, but the growth of video can't be understated. When you have platforms like TikTok that are pretty much dominating the social landscape today, obviously all the other platforms are are crushing it too, but TikTok has kind of come out of nowhere that's 100% focused on video. And so with that, people are now looking at video as one of the dominant activities in social media today. So what that means is that we're seeing sports teams, leagues, rights holders, publishers figure out, okay, how do I actually create more content? How do I make more video content? And this means that everybody, it's a rising tide and lowering of costs. It means that video has become cheaper to actually produce and distribute. It means that editing has increased significantly, right? I'm an advisor to a company that works with sports creatives, and there are thousands and tens of thousands of videographers and photographers and people that can do the dope edits that work at all of these different companies, and that's like, it's kind of like wanting to one-up, your peers. There's this whole kind of economy that sits underneath it where people are making really amazing content for people, and some of them are just doing it without even having jobs, right? They're freelancers, they're contracting. And so we have this ability to actually take that quality video and start to bring it in. Think about how much content is built with influencers and created with influencers every single day, right? There's millions of hours of high quality online video that's happening today that you can kind of take advantage of and be able to kind of build that atmosphere and use social media to build that predisposition for those viewers to actually go back onto your streaming service. How am I doing? Close? All right, so I'm close. The last thing I just wanted to highlight, obviously with the growth of video, it should be no surprise that we're going to talk about TikTok, right? Now, all of the platforms, I believe, all the social networks have significantly improved the amount of video. I know that Twitter in particular, for a lot of our customers and the sports teams, Twitter has seen a big resurgence in terms of longer tail video. Typically, you think about Twitter as kind of being here for only 72 hours, but there's more and more people that want to see longer video content on that. Obviously, we've seen shorter content with Instagram and Reels really blow up. But during the Super Bowl, both of the teams actually grew by more than 100,000 followers on TikTok just in a 24-hour window. Which obviously is really impressive, but when you kind of compare that to some of the other social networks, it can show you just how much extra awareness that you have. Last piece. All right, key trends and takeaways. Once again, live sports continues to be important, but to me, I feel like that should be used as an acquisition solution for a lot of the streaming platforms today. And obviously that's going to differ depending on what your solution is. So platforms that are heavily focused on sport are definitely going to have to lean into the live or to the VOD content to get people to come back week over week and not just tune in on Sundays and watch that sporting event. The second, once again, VOD content has to change. The quality has gone up, and I think we should all take inspiration from social video to think about how we populate the catalogs of content that we license and distribute to these other platforms, because I think the gaps between them have come down greatly. And the last piece, social and streaming are synergistic, and so I would encourage everybody to double down and look at how they're creating content in social. Look at the video data, work with platforms like Conviva or others, but then also be able to take that data and bring that into your own platforms, your own sites, your own websites with new measurement, right? So gone are the days where I had to worry about Nielsen and a panel survey, right? We measure 100% of every single second of every viewing session with Conviva's viewer insights data, right? We can deduplicate the audiences across your multiple devices, so we can give you household level reach for all of the viewers and what they're doing. We can identify different devices that are underneath there, right? We can see that, hey, you're one household, but there's 10 different people that might be logging in and using different devices, and you can figure out how to personalize the video to them. So it's really important, on top of all of this, to basically acknowledge the changes that are happening in the streaming measurement revolution, as we would call it. I'm obviously very biased because I work at a streaming measurement company, but the things that we're doing and the things that we're working on with our customers, and I see a number of you out there today, whether it's on social or streaming, I think is extremely powerful. And we're only going to see the growth of continuous measurement advance in the next few years. So thanks everybody for your time.